Welcome to PhotoshopUser TV, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And now, here are your hosts, the Photoshop guys.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of PhotoshopUser TV, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals and PhotoshopUser Magazine. So welcome back to another episode. As I said, I'm Dave Cross. Corey Barker is here today as well. Yes. And over there, Pete Collins. And apparently, Corey is the only one who didn't get the memo and change shirts between the two shows. But that's okay.
You know.
Just get the video guys to go and put that on the other side.
In the next break, I will flip it inside out. You know.
That's okay. We don't need to see that.
It's okay. So, where are we? What do we have today?
Well, we got our usual collection of tips and tutorials and some prizes to give away if you hang around all the way to the end of the show.
Yes.
So that's motivation alone, because we got, ooh, look at that. That's pretty cool, that prize down there. Ooh. Okay, make sure you stick around for that.
No, that one's for me. I stole that earlier. That's no longer on the prize list.
Well, then you'll get another almost as equally good prize, I'm sure.
We'll just give away Pete's Wacom tablet. Signed. No. So, is that the second show?
Yes.
Is that the lineup? Yes, it is.
Yes.
So, Dave.
Yes.
What do you have?
Well, I have an idea, because I like to have ideas when you just kind of say, well, let's see what I can do with this. So over in Photoshop, I had this photograph, and I wanted to try some kind of effect where, I'm sure you've seen where people replace a photograph with a whole bunch of very small little photographs, but I didn't really want to do that because that would be way too hard. So I wanted to kind of simulate that. So I went into Bridge, and here's a folder. There's just a whole bunch of photos that over the years I've got from iStock, and I want to turn this into something. So you can see there's just a whole bunch of photographs in here. But the first thing I want to do, in order for this to work better, I want to make sure that I'm only including the right thing. So I'm going to come over here to this part that says filter and say, just show me all the portrait images. Because when I tried this with the whole mixture, it just didn't look very good of having tall and wide photographs for the result that I wanted. And then I go to this thing in Bridge, which is actually really cool. It's called Output. And it's kind of the replacement. Oh, don't look, that's the one I've already done. Don't look at that.
Avert your eyes.
What it allows you to do is to make like a contact sheet, but it occurred to me that you don't have to do it just for that purpose. So what I did was I went and I said, all right, let's make a small little document that's only 5 inches wide by 2 inches high. And then down here, where I have all my tall images, I selected them all, and it told me there's 117 of them. So I said, all right, well, let's kind of give this a shot here. I'm going to do 30 columns, so 30 photographs in a row and 4 rows, which is close to, if I was really smart, I would have duplicated 3 more and made 120, but I didn't do that. But that's okay. But the key for this to work for me is I changed all of these factors to 0, because I don't want it to put space in between the photographs. I want them to be right up against each other. And I also made sure that I went down to these overlays and turned off the file name, because I don't want any file names on there. And the benefit of this, generally speaking, is that you can try some settings. If you're not sure, just hit refresh preview, and it goes through and it generates right inside Bridge a preview. Now think about this. This is 117 images that if I tried to do this any other way, it would take a long time. So it's going, well, there you go, and you can see it's put all the images right up against each other. It still kind of puts a bit too much space in between. So let's see, what if I went back in here and put maybe 1 inch just to try it. And you can, that's kind of the idea here, is if I don't have any magic formula, but ooh, that was a lot better. Maybe just a hair tinier, because I want ideally these just to kind of be right up against each other. Okay, so it doesn't like that one apparently.
Dave just gave me an idea.
1 inch is the minimum that you can use, but that's okay, because that's still very close to what I want. Now, what it does is it creates a PDF file. And in fact, I'm going to do this just to show you, because I think it'll be easier for you to see if I give a bit more space in between. At the end of this, I'm going to save a PDF and then open it in Photoshop. So that's some people's complaint about the thing they don't like about Bridge Output is it saves as a PDF. I'm like, okay, so that means one more step. I'm going to put a bunch of photos and save it to my desktop.
In all capital letters.
In all capital letters,
real loud.
so you can just see it without any problem. Now, one of the things that I particularly like about this command is that when it does the preview, it's fairly quick. When you're actually doing it, it actually goes through and generates, but this is the nice part. Now it says PDF generated successfully. I was like, why, thank you, instead of just saying, you're done. So now I come to Photoshop, and now I can go and find that thing that I created. Look at that, it's just screaming at me. I can find it. And I open it. Because I'm opening a PDF, it says, well, how do you want to open it? It shows you the size, and you can make some decisions. I'm going to pretty much stick with what I have here. And then it opens up like this. The nice part is it removes any background. So here's what I would do if I couldn't find a magic formula to get the photographs to all kind of match up with each other, is just kind of force it and just make some marquee selections and push the photographs up right against each other, because all I want to do is just sort of create this mosaic, if you will, of a whole bunch of photos. And depending on how many you have, you may have to do this more or less. But at a certain point, I kind of go, okay, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to select all of this part here, since I have a few empty spaces here, and I'm going to define that as a pattern. And I don't like calling it names like pattern 11, because that's not very helpful. Let's call it pattern 12, because that's much better. And at this point,
it is
now
more distinguishable. Yeah.
I come back to my image, and I want to somehow incorporate the pattern in with her. So I'm going to add a new layer and fill it with, let's say, 50% gray. And let's make the blend mode of that, say, overlay, just so it kind of disappears. Now I go to my layer styles to pattern overlay. Now you might be asking yourself, besides, why don't you just use fill with bubbles pattern, because it's so attractive, why did I do it as a layer style? Well, the reason is if I just said fill, the problem was it wouldn't give me any choices. Here, I can find my pattern. I can change the blend mode to overlay here, and now I can scale it. And that's the reason why I do it as a pattern overlay, because you have the option of going really tiny or really big or anything in between. And of course it stays that way, so even after you click OK, you can still come back in and say, well, I kind of like that, but I want to tweak it, and you could do whatever adjustments to it. And the only kind of trick to this is sometimes you have to play with both blend modes, the blend mode of the top layer to get rid of that gray, and the blend mode of the pattern overlay. But of course the nice thing is you do have both. So if you wish to, you can easily go in and say, well, what happens if I try hard light or soft light or whatever?
And they can interact.
And they interact, exactly. So it's just a nice way, without you having to do any great effort, using Bridge and that Bridge output to create that nice little collection of photos that you make as a pattern. And of course, like most patterns, once it's there, you can just use it over and over again to your heart's content, instead of fill with bubbles pattern.
So you Bridge haters out there, ha!
None of them are here. That's why we can talk about Bridge to our heart's content.
Isn't it funny? This is like you do your Bridge stuff when they're not here. I do my 3D stuff when they're not here. It's just like, well, when
I'll do it all the time. I just figure that the Bridge gets a bad rap because, okay, Lightroom has some advantages, but things like that, from a design perspective, Bridge does a lot more than just sort photos and do camera raw. And as Pete showed in the last show, you can do, batch actions to a folder full in Bridge.
Well, the whole thing comes down to, are you going to be dealing primarily with your own photographs, or are you going to be dealing with yours and other people's photographs? Because if you've got a collection of materials, stock images, or whatever, you're going to need something to be able to. We're visual people. We're going to need to be able to see it. And Bridge actually does a great job of allowing you to track things down. I hit Photoshop and I hit Bridge to open up as soon as I start my computer up.
I have it set through Bridge launches at login. The moment I log in, it launches.
Well, I think part of it too is it happens that the three of us here also, probably more so than some of the other guys, also use Illustrator, potentially InDesign, and they all use Bridge as their kind of hub. So it just makes sense to do things through Bridge. So.
Precisely. All right. So speaking of Pete, it's your turn.
Ho-ho.
What do you have?
All right. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of drawing illustration type of deal here. And this is for the folks that like to draw. I'm speaking to you. I love to doodle, I love to draw, and a lot of times I just feel better drawing with a pencil and a piece of paper. But then I want to be able to use the flexibility of Photoshop to take it to the next level. And so I want to show you a couple little tips that I use to take something from paper and get it into Photoshop. So if we look at my computer, this is basically this gray area here with the monkey is a picture of my sketchbook. I just simply took a picture of it and I imported it in. And to be honest, I can't explain why this little section right here got cut off. You know, my mind just sometimes does weird things, but don't worry about that. This section right here is basically my sketchbook that has been photographed. And you can do this a lot of times now. I'll do a sketch and I'll just simply take a picture with my iPad or something low resolution, and then I'll bring it in and I'll trace over it. But let's say I've done something a little more in depth like this. I take a picture of it, and this is a fairly sizable document, but what I do now is I'm going to take this and I want to clean it up and make it usable so that I can add color, I can add other things to it. First thing I always do is I create a safety copy by using Command or Control J. Just because I'm prone to make mistakes, I always like to have that original layer there if I need to go back to it. And so now I'm going to take this new layer and I'm going to hit Command or Control L to bring up the layer levels. I could have done curves as well, but I'm simply going to click on this right eyedropper. And what this is going to do is wherever I click on it, it's going to say I want that area to be white. Well, we know we want to get rid of the gray of the sketchbook, so I'm just going to hit an area right in here. And it does a pretty good job of eliminating everything but the darkest areas. Now it's lightened up my image a little bit, and I can come in and I can tweak that a little bit, bring back some of the blacks, and so it looks pretty good. And I hit OK. So just with one thing, Command or Control L brought up levels, eyedropper, I've gotten rid of a lot of the dark of the paper. Well, now what I want to do is I'll bring my white paintbrush set to 100%, and let's try it set to default. Let's set it to white. Try that again. Okay, my white paintbrush is wanting to paint with gray. So what I would do now is, don't ask me why, sometimes it just does, okay, especially when we're on camera. What I would do is I would come in here. I can also just go, hey, I'm gonna take these dark areas, and with my lasso tool, I'm just gonna come in and get rid of some of these. And the goal is just to clean up some of these areas, and white just does not wanna help me right there, so I'm gonna try a different way, fill with white, there we go. The great thing about Photoshop is there's usually 3 ways to do it, and usually if you get in trouble,
you went through all 3 of them.
You have to go through all 3 of them, and finally you may get it to work for you. So there you go. That's my tip for today. But so all I'm going to do now is I clean most of that up, and if you were watching the last show, what I want to do now to get this really ready to play in Photoshop, to give it the best capabilities it has, is I want to separate my drawing from the background so that it's just my marks on its own layer with transparency behind it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and do what I did in the last show of selecting color range, and I'm going to pick white, and I'm going to hit OK. And once again, I'm just going to invert it, Command Shift I or Control Shift I, and I just want to modify, contract it maybe 1 pixel since it's pretty complex, and now I just make a copy of that with Command or Control J. Let's hide that other one. And you can see if I zoom in, it's done a pretty good job, but it looks a little bit like it's taken too much out. Well, if I start making some copies of that, what will happen is those areas that it took out some of the color will help bring it back in. And now if I make several more, it will darken up a pretty good amount. If I think it's still a little too light, I'll make a copy and switch this over to maybe multiply. And now it really darkens it up and brings back a lot of those lines. I'm going to drop that down a little bit. And now I merge those 2 together. And you can see right there that now I have this layer that is simply that layer by itself. Now I'm ready to add things like I can come in here and I can clean it up. I get it all nice and clean. Then I add some color. Let's get all this in here. What I'll do is I'll go in. Now I'm playing around. I'll come in and I'll start drawing and adding more stuff to it, and then I can add some color in each. There's the monkey, then the vine, and then the branch. And then I want to come in, and finally I'll add a background, a paper texture with clouds or whatever. And I'm able to add all those layers in that I couldn't use with my regular sketchbook, but I've done it all in Photoshop once I started with the sketch. So anyway, if you love to sketch, that's just a great place to start. Bring it into Photoshop, clean it up, and you can do a lot of great stuff with it there. This is where I spend most of my time drawing in Photoshop once I've got the idea down.
How'd you color that so fast?
It's amazing. That's how good I am. You don't have that special color and add clouds button?
Nah, that plugin that didn't come in yet. Nope, I don't have it. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll come back. I've got a little something Hollywoodish, not surprisingly. Not 3D, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Well, we are back once again just before Corey does his thing. The last show we talked about MPix and their app, and one of the points that Pete made I think is a really good one to stress, regardless of the app and the phone, is just the importance of print. I was, with all the talk about Hurricane Sandy, I saw several stories about people being interviewed in front of their demolished house, and the first thing they said is, all I want to get is my photos.
Right.
Yep.
So it just really emphasizes the importance of not only having digital files. So we tend to use MPix as our lab because they do a great job and give you many different options. But really the point is, don't overlook. You do these things on your screen that are great, but take it the step further and get a print made. It really makes a difference.
Even as a kid, I remember my parents would tell us if we're ever home by ourselves and there's a fire or anything like that happen, grab the box of pictures. It was always, and it's true. Those are irreplaceable. You can't go back and re-get those.
Well, and one of the best things you can do is give prints away, because people will. If you send somebody a print, it's like you just gave them a treasure. And here's the other side of it. Let's say something were to happen. Well, good news is you gave somebody a print. You can at least make a copy of that to have for yourself. True. So we tend to be a little hoarding of our stuff, but a great thing to do is give it away, and then you've got lots of places where your stuff is. If tragedy should strike, you've got extra places.
So the moral of the story today is don't forget to make your prints, and you might want to try MPix as one of those places to get your prints.
Absolutely, and that's Tap to Print is the name of that app. You can go and check that out. So,
cool.
All right.
What do you got, Corey?
I've got a little movie poster thing I did. Actually, I was playing with this morning. Coming from a request I'd gotten a long time ago. There was a movie came out a couple years ago called Source Code with Jake Gyllenhaal, and there was a really cool poster design for it. And I kept getting asked, "Is like, can you do this? Can you do this?" And I was just like, "Oh, I don't know. Nothing really, excited me about it." But then I was just playing around with it this morning, and actually came together pretty good. So, real quick, and I just really didn't plan it. I just kind of dove right in and just grabbed images that looked like they would work, and it all came together rather nicely. So the first thing is I'm going to create a new layer. Now, I've already got my file set up here. It's actually to scale of a movie poster. It's like it's 8 by 12. Now, an actual movie poster is like 27 inches by 40 inches. There's no reason for me to build that big of a file right now. This is actually scaled down proportionally to that size. So the first thing is new blank layer. I'm going to fill it. I don't really need to fill it with air because I'm going to do a cloud render. So I'm just going to make sure my default colors are set. Press D on your keyboard and go to Filter, Render, Clouds. Ooh, that's actually look pretty good. The cloud filter, it seems like it's gotten better. I don't know. It really depends on the file size you do.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Bigger the better.
So,
well, and a lot of people don't realize if you get bad clouds, just run it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just run it. And if you want to get more contrasting clouds, here's a cool tip. Hold down your Option key when you run the clouds filter, and you get a little bit more contrast. Okay. Anyway.
I've heard people refer to that as if you want angrier clouds.
Angrier clouds, yes. Stormy, but that's not the point. Anyway. No, actually what I'm going to do next is go to Filter again and go to Pixilate and choose Mosaic. And this is going to create now kind of this square pattern here. And actually, that size looked pretty good. I'm going to leave the cell size at 45, so we'll do that. Now, I'm going to do a levels adjustment. And this is where I just started to go a little crazy. When I start getting in my zone, I just kind of start doing things and things go a little nuts. So I'm going to grab the white eyedropper here and just click on one of these little darker gray spots. And that just leaves a little bit more random splotches of squares there. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK there. Then invert. Command or Control I will invert those colors. And I'm going to go into my channels, and I'm just going to load the luminosity as a selection, basically the brightness of the image. So if you just Command or Control click right on the RGB composite channel here, loads whatever the brightness values are of that image as a selection. So I'm going to make a new layer, or rather just Command J and copy those selected elements to a new layer. So you can see little bitty blotches there. And like Pete had talked about a moment ago, I'm going to build that density up by making a couple of copies here. Just like that. And we'll just go ahead and merge those together. So I no longer need the original mosaic layer, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Now with these, I'm going to go ahead and apply a color effect. So I'm going to do hue saturation, just press Command or Control U and do colorize. And let's do something more of a yellow, something like that. And this is just going to be a subtle background element, but this is where I started to build the design. So the next thing is I wanted a texture. So I actually had this one. Went in my texture folder and found this one. I was like, all right, this works pretty good. So I'll just go to Image, Image Rotation, and just rotate it 90 degrees, and then go ahead and drag and drop over. Now, I always add the Shift key when I drag and drop images, so it drops it in the middle, and then I can deal with it once it's there. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and scale it up. And when I'm scaling, another habit of mine is I scale proportionately, of course, with the Shift key, but I also add the Option key, and it scales it from the center target rather than one of the corner areas there. So I'm just going to scale that up, and so we can see a lot of the texture there. There we go. So I'm going to actually position this below my little mosaic graphic here, and there we have that. So now, I wanted to create an element. This is actually an old trick. I don't remember. It might have even been you that did this trick a long, long time ago. You or Scott, I remember I saw this, and I was like, you know what, this will come in really handy in this case. So I went into my folder of images here, and let's just say we grab this, really any random image here. And this is the fun part about experimenting, is just you just grab random images, and sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. But I'm going to use, here in the toolbar, go into the selection tools and grab the single column marquee tool. And I'm just going to click once in a random area of this image, and then press Command J. That is a 1 pixel wide area of this image that I have copied to a new layer. Then I'm going to put it in free transform and then expand it outward. And you'll notice it gives me these lines. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I'm going to take that and drag it on over here. And let's just scale it so it fits inside of my image here. So there we go. Now I'm going to give this a little bit of a color. So I'm actually going to do, again, a hue saturation, and we'll just give this more of a blue. And then even change the blend mode of this to something like overlay. And like, oh, we're starting to get something kind of cool here.
Okay, I've got to interrupt for a second here. Dave, isn't this the part where we feel like we're watching PBS like Bob Ross or somebody that's painting, and we're looking at it going, where the heck is this going? But we know in just a minute it's all going to just go, whoosh, and we're going to go, oh, we hate you.
But this isn't the cool part. So what I'm going to do now.
We're looking at it going, where is he going with this?
So now I need a subject. I need a face. So I'm going to grab this subject here, this young lady. And I liked it because it's a straight on, but the hair has kind of got some cool things happening here. So again, drag and drop over. And it's a little small, so I'm actually going to scale it to fit in the layout here. So there's that. So I'm going to put a layer mask on it. Just add a reveal all layer mask, fills with white. I'm going to grab my gradient tool, linear gradient. I'm just going to come in from the left, or the left side here, and just go over this way. Go, ooh, something like that. Ooh, kind of cool. But in the original poster, the lines were kind of peering through the subject as well. So in a little known feature, still to this day, it baffles me, I'm going to double click on the layer to open up the blending options. And here we have the blend if slider. So if I go and take the underlying layer and hold down the option key and split it, we can allow some of the lines to peer through, giving me kind of a grungier look to it. And even bring some of the dark areas in if we wanted to. So it makes that transition a little bit more smoother. So it's getting this kind of like technical look to it. But then I thought, well, why stop there? So then I remembered I did this design a long time ago. I used this binary code that I had created on a layer. It's just a simple text layer with a bunch of ones and zeros. So I'm going to take that and drag it on over. And then change that blend mode to overlay. Ooh. Pretty cool, but it's obstructing the subject a little bit too much, so let's go ahead and put a layer mask on that layer. And once again, using the gradient tool, we'll just kind of mask away some of the areas here. So it's subtle in the face, but not, not too crazy. Now, here's a cool trick when it comes to photos. If you see this photo, I'm going to actually make a duplicate of that layer of this girl, and then remove the color. Press Shift-Command-U, and then change the blend mode to soft light. And it puts a little bit more grungier look on that subject. And if it seems too contrasting, just simply drop the opacity down a little bit. So is that not looking cool so far? Mm-hmm. All right, so last thing, I was thinking, all right, well down here there should be something going on, like maybe a scene from the movie, so why not a car explosion?
Why not?
So,
that was Dave coming into work this morning.
So I'll just drag this one on over, and it's enormous, so let's go ahead and scale that down. Now what I'm doing here is, somebody's bound to ask, notice how my document expanded out there? This is a good sized document. When I dragged it over, because it was so high res, it really filled the image here. So I put it in free transform by pressing Command or Control T. But if you also press Command or Control 0, expands the document out so you can see where the control handles are, so you're not constantly zooming out and doing all that stuff. So that I'm going to scale down, position it right down here in the corner. Already we're getting this cool Hollywood composite happening here. So once again on that layer, I'm going to add a layer mask and just do some fading. Now, if you want to put multiple layer masks on a single layer mask, or multiple gradients on a single layer mask, you're going to want to use the foreground to transparent gradient right here inside the menu here. So we'll just come in from the top, from the side there, maybe over here. That helps that blend in a little bit better. And then you just finally go ahead and add the title, and then change its blend mode to overlay. I simply can't go on. I've done too much. But there we have it. That's pretty much how you can kind of just go from one extreme to another and then build your Hollywood effect on top of it. So that was kind of loosely based on that source code poster, but seeing how these stacking these elements. But one of the most key things I think here is blend modes and that blend diff. Mm-hmm. I use that blend diff, and I seem to be using it more now than I ever did, because it allows me to just blend things that blend modes just can't do. It takes that extra step further. So remember that feature in there, and you can actually create some really interesting composites. And of course, everything is still on its own layer. Notice everything I created here is all still on its own layer. So if I don't like those lines, I can take that out, or I can drop its opacity and just adjust things so it tweaks it a little bit better. So.
Well, I think the two things to come away from are the whole idea of the layer blending modes. But I kick myself so many times. As soon as you went to the blend diff, and I keep going, I've got to remember to use that more because it is so powerful. But it's one of those obscure ones. It's kind of like actions. I should be using it, but I play with it, and I'm not quite sure how it works, so I leave it alone. But it will save you so much time and give you a look you can't get any other way. And I kick myself for not using it more.
And a great thing now about CS6 especially is that when you would use blend diff on a layer, you would have no idea. Unless you personally knew and you hand it off to another designer or something like that, they would never know. They'd be like, why is this blend, I can see through this. I put the blend mode back to normal, I don't know what's going on. You had no indication that the blend diff sliders had been adjusted. Now it puts this tiny little overlapping squares on the layer to indicate that you have adjusted the blending options. And that way you definitely indicate that. So.
Well, that's nice.
The other thing I think is worth mentioning, because I was going to mention it when you did it, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow because I could tell you're on a roll there, is when you brought the photo of the woman over, she was a little small. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to ever make anything bigger,
You're right,
but because you knew you were going to kind of blend her in, it wasn't as crucial, because yes, you do lose a little bit of quality by getting bigger, but if you know that your end result is going to be, I'm going to move a blend diff slider, or I'm going to change the blend mode, then it's okay to enlarge things because they come just part of the design.
I mean, and my rule of thumb for upsampling basically is if I think it's going to go over 200%, then I probably won't use it. Unless I'm going to be doing some effecting like this. You're absolutely right. I knew I was going to be blending it and doing some texturing on it, so the quality wasn't as big of an issue. But when you are designing, that's something to definitely keep in mind for sure. So.
Very good. Awesome. Well, after that, we need a break because that was exhausting. Cool, but exhausting. So we'll be right back. We'll come back with prizes and a wrap-up. Don't go away. Come on back.
At Adorama, our trained staff share your love of photography and can help you find what you're looking for. Our inventory is stocked with all types of cameras and accessories you need. Adorama has it all. Adorama, more than just a camera store. Visit us at 42 West 18th or at adorama.com.
And we're back. It's contest time. We're going to give away some cool stuff. But before we do that, I want to tell you how you can acquire these fantastic prizes. You're going to go to kelbytv.com/contest. As you can see right here, we've got the contest entry form. Go down here and choose PhotoshopUser TV. Enter all the necessary fields and tell us what you'd like to see on the show. Leave us a comment or just tell us how much you love us or hate us.
Really anything. You can just put like a big X. Doesn't really matter.
A big X.
We do appreciate your input in terms of suggestions for tutorials and stuff like
we
that.
love good jokes too. If you have, there's a shortage of good Photoshop jokes. So if you have one, by all means.
Or a poem. Remember once someone did a poem about Photoshop? That was very cool.
Yes,
so
that is very cool.
There's a challenge
I
for you.
prefer haikus.
But
all righty
what
then.
will they get if they are selected?
Well, they get two fabulous prizes. First of all, ooh, this one's even shrink wrapped. I can't even open it to show. It's the Photoshop CS6 book for digital photographers by Mr. Scott Kelby. Very nice, thick book of stuff.
So it is not.
Also,
it won't be tainted with our fingerprints.
exactly.
You get the nice
Both these
shrink
things
wrap.
are shrink wrap. Perfect Mask 5 from On1 Software. Great way if you're doing masking compositing. Sorry, I covered up the name. It can speed up your work with this nice plug-in. So you get both of those should your name be chosen.
Now I just want to. Can I kind of plug one more thing here?
Sure.
I just feel like I haven't talked about this in a long time. Some of you remember, if you've been following us for a while, I used to do tutorials over at planetphotoshop.com, and I'm actually starting to do more tutorials over there lately, but just want to go over there and check it out. We've got a new redesign on the site. So, it's completely been redone. It's got a new, kind of in blog form. We've got new tutorials coming up by not just myself, but other great Photoshop artists as well. So you definitely want to check that out, planetphotoshop.com. It's a free site, free tutorials, and you'll definitely want to check that out.
Very cool. Definitely worth checking out.
Yes, I like it.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. Does it not? I think that was too many negatives.
Yes. It is
All right. Well,
lunchtime.
thank you for joining us, and thanks to our sponsors and for you guys to watching. And we'll see you back here next time on another episode of Photoshop User TV.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.